Dear sir, I regret to say that Private Bernstein, number 3088, first company London Yard, has been killed in action. He was shot, killed in action. Bullet entered the right lung. Very close by. Examination of keeping their breath. Never regained consciousness and died about 6 p.m. yesterday.
When I wake up, well I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well I know I'm gonna be the man who gets drunk next to you. And if I have a hey, I know I'm gonna be the man who's having next to you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm working, yes I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you. And when the money comes in for the work I'll do, I'll pass along every cent of it to you. When I come home, oh I know I'm gonna be the man who comes home back to you. And if I grow old, well I know I'm gonna be the man who's growing old with you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. Well, I know I'm gonna be the man who's lonely without you. When I'm dreaming, well, I know I'm gonna dream about the time when I'm with you.
The noise was terrible as it was coming down. We knew we were going to have the bomb so near us. Luck was with us as we had a small building at the back of the house, so that saved much of the blast and damage, but our roof was almost gone. But we were all alive, and thank God.
I remember the sound. There was always the sound more than anything else. You got this boom, and that's when the drop bomb. In fact, in Bristol, they dropped one of the biggest ones they had, that was during the war, but it didn't go off. It was £900, and it was enormous. And they had it just stuck in the ground. It didn't explode, fortunately.
Come in. Grandad and I slept in the air raid shelter. My dad put me a wire netting sort of piece over and a mattress on it, and we went down there in the night, so we didn't give anybody any trouble. I wasn't sitting there listening for the sound of something dropping.
Yeah, if you think about the ages now, it's like everything now, isn't it? It's all different. A 14-year-old, I started work at 14. I went to the munition factory at 15. Quite enjoyed it. I can't say that it was ever very difficult. I suppose the most difficult part of the war was having rations, not being able to go out and buy a bar of chocolate.
Yeah, so it seems like you adapted to war life really well.
Oh,
so did you find it normal? Did everyday life continue when it ended?
No, because it was still, the war was still, we were still clearing up, as you would say. Has your boy come back? You know, it's a bit hard saying, has your boy come back yet? And you've got your fingers crossed that they're... And then I said to my granddad, what shall I do? He said, you just sit in the corner and be there.
Loveliest of trees, the cherry now is
When I was 21, I heard a wise man say, give crowns and pounds and guineas, but not your heart away. Give pearls away and rubies, forgive your fancy free. For I am 21, no use to talk to me. When I was 21, I heard him say again, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with prices plenty and sold for endless truth. For I am 22 and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true.
And there with the rest are the
and many to count are the stalwart, and many the brave, and many the handsome of face and the handsome of heart, and few that will carry their looks or their truth to the grave. I wish one could know them, I wish there were tokens to tell the fortunate fellows that now you can never discern, and then one can talk with them friendly and wish them farewell, and watch them depart on the way that they will not return. But now you may stare as you like, as there's nothing to scare, and brushing your elbow and guessed at and not to be told, they carry back right to the coiner the mintage of man, the lads that will die in their glory and never be old. Here's my teen plough that I once used to try, and hear the harness jingle when I was man alive. I, the horses trample, the harness jingles now, no change though you lie under the land you used to plough. His footfall playing along the river shore, with lads to chase the leather, now I stand up no more. I, the ball is flying, the lads play heart and soul, the goal stands up, the keeper stands up to keep the goal. Is my girl happy that I fought hard to leave, and has she tired of weeping as she lies down at me? Aye, she lies down lightly, she lies not down to weep. Your girl is well contented, be still, my lad, and sleep. Is my friend hearty? Now I lie thin and pine, and has he found to sleep in a better bed than mine? Yes, lad, I lie easy, I lie as lads would choose, I cheer a dead man's sweetheart. Never ask me who. Alan Holbrook.
remember the litany elegy, that which turns words to melodies. This is she who draws on memory and carves a statue to stand for centuries. I remember forgetting my focus and energy, memories and what they all had meant to me. The flurry of words and dreams would come floating back eventually. I remember rolling down the rolling hill, top speed, full steam. I had to get back on track and train my conduct, off the rails. I remember fragmented pictures, sounds, smiles and senses. Through nature bonds bonded and kinships mended. I remember rolling beneath the trees, marvelling at the marvellous. We should all become one with nature, for 'tis already part of us. I remember the maze of my mind, amazing in time. Send me a sign, the exit is nigh. I remember that it was raining, the days nightly replacing, the wet sun resurfaces, shedding its glinting veil, fashioned life's elixir, a mixture of flood and fire and fear. I'm not scared of the sun. I've barely begun to remember my minutes and the things that I've done. I will not remember my last breath when my final fight is fought, nor the start when the first emerged battle cry was heard. I do, however, recall some bits in the middle, but if I told tales of that, we'd be here till next year.
I remember waking up to sunrises made of smoke and dust. I remember 5 a.m. conversations with the 3 people I call home. I remember the chaos, but the 4 of us somehow making it work. I remember the first time I ever watched my mum cry. I could have brought the whole world down with the fire rumbling in my belly. I remember the first ever x-ray and the way the tumor growing in my knee somehow found its way into our home. I remember the 2-hour flight to Mumbai and the sharp hospital lights and the book after book after book of needles. I remember someone putting chocolate in my mouth and not really being able to taste it. I remember being 14 and thinking, my sister is Atlas. I place the weight of everything on her shoulders. I remember the sting of loneliness, of trying to swallow each syllable whole before it even left my mouth, because I could never get my E's or my R's right. I remember the weight of having to repeat myself, walking on the grass, behind, always unsatisfied. I remember how clumsy my words always sounded. I remember going home for the first time and the way I cried because my bed didn't feel quite right. I remember 14 years of it, and yet my skin didn't welcome the heat. I remember my tongue forming words after so long. I remember then how foreign my own language tasted in my mouth. I remember the first time I touched a keyboard with intention. I was 11, and all the words I've lost since then, all the rage I've swallowed and spit out, again and again and again, all the words that have cut my stomach open with their cruelty. I don't remember being 5, but I knew it hurt. I remember when silence first became a song of comfort. I remember hot chocolate nights, sweet pizza nights, pumpkin carving nights, spill your heart in this little room nights, scented candles and plastic jar of lollipops, sleepless corridor nights, karaoke nights, nights spent listening to god-awful music. I remember the first time I accidentally called it home and thought, yes, home.
I'm John Townsend, and was a cousin, or Joy was my cousin, Joy Burden, who came to own the King Weston estate. Of course, Joy's father survived the First World War. He was in the First World War, but he survived. And he had two children, Joy and Caleb. And Joy was born in 1918, Caleb in 1920. And Caleb was the son and heir, very handsome, you know, loved by everyone. And he went into the RAF in the Second World War and training, and he would pilot, sort of sergeant pilot. And one day, I never heard from them again. And so that was the last of the male Dickinsons. And Joy and her husband Roger sadly had no children, so when she died, that was really the last of the family. The connection between Millfield and King Weston is that at the beginning of the war, they had to move out from the house, and all the furniture was sold because the house was requisitioned. And at the end of the war, they said to Jack Meyer, who was a friend of theirs, "What are we going to do with this house? You see, it's empty and we'll never be able to move back in again." And he said, "Oh, lease it to me. I just need a boarding house for Millfield." And so they rented it for many years. And in 1991, which was the 50th anniversary of when Caleb was lost, Joy handed the house over to Millfield. She gave it to Millfield, and it almost as an anniversary thing. Jane Sedgman is going to read a piece from my grandmother's diary from the First World War. Jane Sedgman is the church warden here at King Weston. This diary, which I've had for many years, it records the fact that George Dickinson's death. But George and my grandmother, Pearl Shuckburgh, were rather sweet on each other, but they weren't engaged, although Joy sometimes said that they were engaged. And so Jane's now going to read this piece, and one has to be conscious of the fact that my grandmother never wrote in this diary again, which makes it very poignant.
I ought really not to be making my first entry today, as I am utterly, utterly depressed and miserable. Dear old George Dickinson has been killed. He was killed on the 3rd of May near Ypres, and was shot in the thigh and killed at once. Thank heaven Blanche was a perfect dear and wrote to me at once when they knew, so I did not have the shock of seeing it.
I remember looking out of the window. A seemingly perfect, untouched sheet of ice and snow carpets the wintry world outside. I wondered if my life would ever be as distressing as some of those who I've heard about. I spotted an imperfection in the snow, a single set of solitary footprints trudging towards the silvery slopes. I remember thinking how lucky I was to be sat in that seat, safe and sound, by a warm fire. Gazing out at the horizon, a blood-orange hue was all that remained of the setting sun.
The days were long, yet nothing was dull and nothing was boring. All time was in a song, even when parents are snoring. The week feels like a year, and innocence is immortal. Everything that you hear is new, and creativity is your portal to a world even softer than before. And there are no parents to control, for this world is imagined from the core, and everything in this mind is whole. For it does not know of loss, of tyranny which infects at a cost of innocence and swells to become grotesque and fat. I am not yet old, but I am an adult, and childhood is slowly slipping. But I intend to keep the memories which can only grow with age, and take me to a place exempt of adult rage. To remember is to preserve, and as we cherish our delicate delicacy, needn't I remind you, on this earth, where you begin is the foundation of your legacy.
Mustard-coloured blisters. Their eyes are blind, all sticky and stuck together.
Sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently.
They're always fighting for their breath and can only whisper.
They say their throats are closing and they know they will choke.
My name is Vera Britton. My fiancé and younger brother were both killed in the war, and I am a pacifist.
我们走了半个世纪，才今晚来到这里的。英国人给了每一个人20两，上建钱才和给了我们每一个人10块，给中国回家。
我们14万人来这里，给他们造坦克、挖沟渠。 埋葬那些战死在前线人的尸体。今晚有个人在说圣诞节，我不知道那是什么。
She's Elsie Knocker, and she's Mary Chisholm. And before coming to France, we were professional motorbike racers.
Now we transport the dead from no man's land, all by ourselves.
Elsie does most of the medical work,
while Mary fetches the wounded, often under intense enemy fire.
We came over in 1914, and truth be but known, we thought the war would be good fun, and that it would all be over by Christmas.
But that seems like a lifetime ago now, and there's no end in sight yet. It feels like it might snow tonight, Mary.
El meu nom és Pedro Ferrés Costa, y encara que el meu país és neutral, estic lluitant com un català.
Yo soy castellano leonés.
Yo soy andaluza y 15.000 de nosotros hemos venido a Francia para luchar y conseguir apoyo con el fin de lograr la independencia de España.
$15,500 Mazda of the Caribbean suka yi fada a British West Indian Regiment. 350,000 African Americans suka yi fada ma USA. 200,000 maza suka zo daga Senegal don su ba sun yi fada ma France. Ɗaruruwan dubun maza da mata suka rasu sun da suka yi fada ma Belgium da Germany a East Africa da wasu wuri yanzu kamar Tanzania, Uganda da Congo.
Le nostre trincee sono inespicate tra le montagne sul confine tra Italia e Austria. Le scorte di cibo si stanno esaurendo, fa così freddo che abbiamo dovuto scavare chilometri di caverne nel ghiaccio gelido. I nostri stessi generali, sfruttando il terrore e la paura per ottenere la nostra cieca obbedienza, hanno ammazzato quelli fra noi giudicati più pavidi e vigliacchi. Altri 1000 sono stati uccisi dalla morte bianca, sepolti vivi da frane e valanghe. Come diciamo in Italia, guerra cominciata, inferno scatenato. Ma un minuto di pazienza può trasformarsi in 10 anni di pace.
My name is Henry Williamson. I'm 19 and I'm dying for a cigarette, but I haven't any tobacco.
Je m'appelle Gervais Morion et j'ai 20 ans.
Mein Name ist Otto Schmidt und ich bin 18 Jahre alt.
Des poux rampent sur tout mon corps. Et je ne me suis pas lavé correctement depuis 3 semaines.
Die Granaten fliegen unten weg über unsere Köpfe hinweg. Ich habe mich seit 1,5 Monaten nicht mehr richtig gewaschen.
Something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I've got to stay clear. He's telling me stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the streets, singing songs and carrying signs, mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man will come and take you away. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Paul Budgeon.
Andrew Miller.
John Batterby.
William Dickinson.
Christopher Noel Buxton.
John O'Brien.
It all started in the summer of 1939 when the local school that I was at in London's East End sent me on this holiday. We had to save up money towards it during the year, and that paid for it. And so they sent me down here, and that would have been in the July of 1939. And so then I came back home, and at the beginning of September, well, the 3rd of September in fact, 1939, war was declared on Germany. When my father was threatened to take me back to London because he wasn't happy with where I was staying, then his wife intervened and said, well, we've just left. They've been staying, temporarily at the Bear Hotel, which I imagine is pretty expensive. So they decided to rent a local house that had become available. And that was, at the end of the terrace, only, a few hundred yards from the Bear Hotel. So, for some reason, street became dominant in my life. I was so impressed that Clem Attlee had sent his son there that I decided it would be a good thing to send our kids there.
Do you remember
It's weird.
Oranges after the war? Or bananas?
Well, I think things like bananas and that didn't stop for quite a number of months after the war because there was a complete shortage. So I mean, my recollection was very much scrumping, or you wouldn't call it scrumping because you use that word for fruit. But we used to pinch cakes in the local thing. You used to get ever so crowded, and we stand at the back. And I think they must have put them deliberately at the back for
George Powlesby.
James Rawson.
St. John's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 12. Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends." Inspiring words to which we will return, but let's begin with three much shorter ones, three little words murmured every Remembrance Sunday, lest we forget. A century on from the armistice, there seems little danger of forgetting. Since 2014, a veritable barrage of books and films have targeted every conceivable anniversary occasioned by the Great War. To be honest, we have no chance of forgetting. But what chance we understand? A decade ago, the death of Harry Patch, Britain's last surviving World War I veteran, gave the nation pause for thought. Officer of the Légion d'honneur, Knight of the Order of Leopold, Freeman of the City of Wells, Honorary Master of Arts, and dependable Somerset plumber, Harry Patch had fought in the trenches at Passchendaele, where hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed. He finished the war in an Isle of Wight hospital following an attack on his gun position, in which three of his closest colleagues died. Patch himself was reluctant to get involved in official commemorations, calling acts of remembrance mere show business. And maybe in later life he was familiar with Tom Learer's elegant swipe at war nostalgia, that although the Second World War produced many hit songs, it was not primarily a musical. But Harry Patch's real beef was this: at churches and cenotaphs, the length and breadth of the country, the victims of war are remembered through the language of war, not with bitter repudiation, as Wilfred Owen did in his poetry, but reverently, as though the fatuous military hubris which triggered the First World War, and lest we forget, military hubris on both sides, as though that hubris was something to be venerated. Don't get me wrong, although war can be waged needlessly, it is with gratitude that we remember what those in the front line achieved for us. This evening's concert is in part a way of expressing our thankfulness. Thankfulness that the men named on the tablets in King Weston Church and in our school chapel helped hand us the gift of peace, a gift bought at the very highest price, a gift that reminds us of Jesus' own greater love. But isn't it problematic having the idioms and symbols of war at the very heart of our remembrance? Do they not cauterize the senses? Do they not numb us to the knowledge that whether winners or losers, no one who is caught up in conflict ever emerges unscathed or unscarred? For me, a Zulu proverb puts it well: when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. As a species, we have a troubling taste for wars and slaughter. But no less significantly, we also weep when we remember such follies. We shed tears for victims we have never known. And at its best, remembrance holds up a mirror to our morally conflicted selves. It lets us wrestle with the riddle of human existence. How on the one hand we have a sense of the highest good, to which we give the name God. And how on the other, frailty and folly are so often our undoing, for which the surest medicine, maybe the only medicine, is forgiveness. 2 nights ago on this very stage, Nelson Mandela's former bodyguard described the torture he himself had suffered under apartheid. And then he spoke of how, years later, he came to forgive and befriend the man who subjected him to it. Evil is reversible. That is the great good news. Evil can be changed. It can be transformed into good by forgiveness and love. A mystery which brings us to a proper trembling. How then to conclude? Well, 2 world wars and subsequent conflicts teach us that the dark soil of sin and evil gets reworked time and time and time again. But fruit somehow germinates in that soil, in the garden of remembrance, and at length the fruit grows free. Fruit of courage and solidarity, of sacrifice and reconciliation, of rebirth and resurrection. At remembrance, we may look back 100 years and confidently say, never again. But more profitably, we look into the human heart 100 times, and little by little begin to discern at its still centre a gift, the most beautiful gift of all, the gift of greater love. Jesus used that gift to absorb violence and not to pass it on. We can follow suit. Love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man.
Roger Road.
Hyperthermesia. That's when people remember a lot, almost everything. In a way, our world is full of it. We have this culture full of remembrance, the idea that people live on through us. We remember those who came before us, those who fought for us, died for us, lived for us, the ones whose absence left us hollow, the ones we wish took us with them, the ones we thought we couldn't live without. We remember people even if it hurts us, so that they are never truly gone. And to those we cannot remember by name, those we lost in the crowd, you are a story. You are the faint memory at the back of someone's mind, the name that sounds familiar but cannot be placed. I'm sorry we forgot your name, but we remember you too.
I remember the days we ran free, without the heavy weight of the world on our shoulders, when we didn't have a dark cloud hanging over our heads of what if, when, why. Our past worries seem frivolous, simply representing time past, the people we've become. How much we've grown, how much we've evolved, how much we've changed. I remember when the ceaseless inevitability of life didn't force us into the vicious cycle of monotony, when we didn't care what other people thought, didn't let people's impertinent opinions influence what our heart was telling us. We said exactly what we thought, exactly when we wanted to, untouched by the dictative hand of society. I remember the simple joys which brought such happiness, the feeling of basic childhood elation, satisfied by playing outside with friends who either gradually but unknowingly lost contact with, watching your favourite television programme at the same time every day, or simply singing at the top of your lungs on long car journeys. The ability to keep things alive with our memory is a tool we must utilise to ensure the important things are not forgotten, are never forgotten. We must remember the things that make us, us, the people that have guided us, the events that have shaped us, and the unknowing sacrifices that have been made that mean we are who we are.
in remembrance of Sydney Masters. In remembrance of Roger Watson.
Frederick Mander. I remember our little hands as me and my friend played with melting ice in the 40-degree summer heat. I remember that massive argument with my friend because I had received a bronze medal and my friend a silver when it was meant to be the other way round. I remember fighting with my cousin over the chopsticks we wanted. One was blue with superheroes on it and the other was plain brown. I remember dressing up as SpongeBob for Halloween. I looked around excitedly through the 2 holes in the cardboard box. I remember my first swimming competition. I was worried from the day before that my goggles would come off. I remember when my friend bit me because I had more paper money than he had. I managed to hold in my tears until my mom came to pick me up. I remember skiing with my cousin. We played mini tag on the ski lift until he pushed me off. I remember always answering that my favorite fruit was apple at my birthday parties. I wonder why, because it wasn't.
I remember the terrible guilt I felt when, 5 or 6, I punched my father on the chin. I remember Gran Walker's little house and her wonderful chocolates. I remember my excitement to leave school at 2 o'clock to meet my newborn brother. I remember drawing treasure maps and castles in my grandparents' caravan. I remember playing in the shallow river at Moreton near my grandmother's house. I remember the big beech tree in the forest where I once built a den. I remember the adventures of lightsaber duels and quests for the Lost Ark. I remember walking with the dog in the still beauty of the bluebell woods. I remember canoeing down the river and seeing the purple sunset over the harbour. I remember the joy of exploring secret coves and islands all day long. I remember standing in the goalmouth on countless cold Sunday mornings. I remember watching Gerrard score and Anfield roar. I remember when the night sky shone with a red and green shooting star. I remember sleepovers and games in the garden and going to the park and the beach and the woods. I remember 1,000 half-planned dreams and schemes that never came to be. I remember forgetting and finding God. I remember images and memories that define my being. I remember love and words and songs and people and places that justify my existence. And if ever I forget, I will remember finding life on a dusty bookshelf, divinity within a weary dream.
We
charming.